right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Medusa Deluxe. It's going to be a weird one, guys, but we have a great episode coming up here. A couple of great guests. We've got Guillermo Barahona and Rose Donahue, and they have a couple of short films out right now that they collaborated on, and it was great getting them both here on the show. So, we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces for this weird movie, Medusa Deluxe, but that's coming up in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. So with that said, you know what? Let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Medusa Deluxe. All right, we are going to talk about a weird one today. It should be a fun one to talk about. And joining me, I've got two great guests. We've got Guillermo Barahona and Rose Donahue. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Guillermo, you suggested this movie, and we'll get into it in a minute about, I don't know where this one hit your radar, but before we do, though, it is both your first times on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself to my listeners and tell them about what you guys do?
Okay, yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Rose Donahue. I'm an actor and producer, and we enjoyed watching Medusa Deluxe. I'm excited to talk to these gentlemen about it for sure.
Absolutely. And you guys just recently worked together on a film, right?
Yeah, so this is our second collaboration when we saw each other at the Nevada Women's Film Festival a few months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell them a little bit about the film before we jump into Medusa Deluxe.
Yes. Quick introduction. My name is Guillermo Barahona. I'm also a Vegas-based producer and filmmaker here in Vegas. Our movie was Decision, which is a story of our character coming to terms with his past in order to make a decision to solve his immigration status.
Right on. Very cool. Well, right on. With Medusa Deluxe, was this one that had been on your radar? I'm guessing, I believe it was a Sundance premiere. Is that when you first heard about it?
No, I just have been following the A24 movies recently, and
Sure.
especially now that we have the ongoing strike, I was like, they were good parts, so let's support them a little more. So that's where I was like, perfect. And it's a detective story, murder mystery.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's actually a really good point. And I know, Rose, you've been out there doing the strike, and that's awesome. And thank you for doing what you're doing there. But that's a great point, though, about A24. Like, they have been one of the few studios, or maybe only a couple, that have done any kind of part in trying to help further things along. So it's great to shine a light on this. And this has been a kind of under the radar movie. I know it had a lot of buzz out of the fest, and then it kind of went away. And when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, I forgot about that movie. I just haven't seen anything about it. And sure enough, it was coming out a week later. I'm glad we all got a chance to see it, and we're going to, get into it here. It's definitely, I think there's going to be some interesting things to get into. With that said, let's just start getting into puzzle pieces. Guillermo, we'll go with you first. What do you have for your first puzzle piece here for Medusa Deluxe?
Oh, Lord. That one is kind of like the obvious, the film style. The one-shot technique, I was just so brilliant, and I just immediately thought back 3 years ago to 1917. The way how Sam Mendes went about that movie of just giving us the whole story so grounded right from the character's perspective, and we couldn't go anywhere else, and just hit so well. Because when I was like, is that a one shot? And then I was just like, it is a one shot. And it was just, so brilliant.
Oh yeah, absolutely. From a filmmaking perspective, were the cuts here obvious, or did you think they really seamlessly made a one shot here?
I mean, I watched 1917 a whole bunch of times, spotting all the cuts as all the filmmaking blogs were going around. So this one, I felt like it was a bit more obvious, but that was because I was looking more for the cuts. I was like, oh, they're moving here, or fog over there. I was like, oh, cut right there, spinning around, perfect. So that's when it felt more obvious, because I've been already practicing more, keeping an eye over where the cuts could be at.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's an interesting like filmmaking technique, and like there's so many different reasons to do it. Like here, I think it just adds to the claustrophobia of being like in those corridors and all that stuff of this venue that they're in. And so and then of course 1917 is all out in the open. So I mean like doing it for totally different reasons. But Rose, are you a fan of 1917?
I did enjoy seeing it. I saw it in theaters. I did not do a deep dive into reviewing it many times, but I
Hmm.
definitely liked seeing it. I agree with you about this claustrophobia that it creates for Medusa Deluxe.
Sure.
It really it does. It's much tighter, as you mentioned, just more in enclosed spaces, which I think was really a cool move in terms of creating tension.
Sure.
And then they had some pretty extreme close-ups too as part of that,
Hmm.
which I think was a really great touch in terms of the like getting invested in the different characters. But in
Yeah.
terms of the one shot, I gotta say, I just looked up the cinematographer, Robbie Ryan. I mean, that person must be in good shape. Like, I cannot imagine like carrying a camera all around. I'm sure, the steady cam and everything, but whoo, kudos,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. A lot of stairs in that venue that
Yes.
they're in. Oh God, making me exhausted just watching it.
Right?
But
Yeah.
let's go on to another puzzle piece. Rose, what do you have for your first piece?
So I have Blow Up directed by Michelangelo Antonioni.
Yeah,
I believe it's a 1966 film. Didn't write down the date.
67. I know
Oh,
because we
okay.
actually covered it on Awesome Movie Year.
Oh, amazing. Okay, cool.
Nice.
Yeah, so I chose that one because it's a murder mystery as well. And the main shot that made me think about it was when the gentleman with the that runs the event and had that blazer on, um,
Hmm.
gray hair, awesome,
Sure.
lovely hair. Anyway,
Oh yeah, that guy had a good look to him for sure.
yeah, he was very
Yes.
Yeah.
cool, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on what his character's name is, but there's a moment where he's standing in this hallway and there's pink mirrors on either side of him, and there's this sense of depth because of how like far away he is and like this hallway is. And
Right.
it reminded me of a few of the shots in Blow Up. Specifically, it's not exactly the same, but there is one shot in the film where there's the models and they have pieces of glass like in between them,
Yeah.
that goes back, and again like really great depth creation there. So I think between the fact that it is a murder mystery and it had these kind of artsy shots, and I guess maybe just because it has models in general, Medusa Deluxe is about hair modeling, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
Blow Up has them as well, so I think that's where I get that overlap.
Yeah, that's a great piece. I hadn't thought about that one, and yeah, just that world of like this very specific like fashion slash modeling slash art really kind of mixed with a mystery like this, and it definitely creates a different kind of a setting for a mystery. Usually, I don't know if I'm gonna step on any puzzle piece toes here, but like with various murder mysteries, it's usually like I don't know in a house or something like that, and somebody got murdered, but this is definitely a different kind of setting, and Blow Up, I think, is kind of a similar setting in a way to this. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Guillermo, a fan of Blow Up?
I've not seen it. It's on
Okay.
my watch list though, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
weird one,
throwback
but
a little bit. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like it is a weird one a little. Yeah.
yeah, it's worth checking out though
Yeah.
for sure. I will go with a weird one myself, actually, for my first piece here. From 2018, it's Her Smell, an Alex Ross Perry film with Elizabeth Moss as this self-destructive rock star, and it takes place pretty much completely backstage at this concert where she's kind of just destroying her career basically. And you not only have all the backstage stuff and the hallways and the corridors that we're talking about, but you have just this insane tension that's created a lot by the sound design. And that was the thing that like struck me the most with this movie Medusa Deluxe is the score and the
Mm.
sound design are just it's like getting in your head, and like it almost makes you feel like you're going crazy and like you don't know where you're going. And that's something that Her Smell did so well. And there's like a constant thumping to the sounds of the venue and everything going on in the walls and in the other rooms next door. And it's very disorienting, and it really creates a really immersive kind of experience. And both of these movies, I think, did it really well.
I've not seen that one, but sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do agree about the score.
Yeah.
It did give a sense, just almost kind of like a little bit of Country for Old Men, with like sometimes like the silence there was.
Sure.
Like you'd only hear like the brushing, the hairsprays and everything, and like just the dial. And it's just like, yeah, it just added more to like that claustrophobia of things. Like we're stuck here.
Sure. No Country for Old Men is, first of all, one of the best like sound design films like ever, I think. And also, like, as a composer myself, like a great example of when not to use score. It's just like an expert example of that, of like sometimes, you want to, show off, you want to, do some cool stuff when you're scoring a film, but sometimes the best thing is just holding back. And that's something that the Coen brothers know all about. And, that film really uses just the right amount of music. So absolutely. Guillermo, let's go to another puzzle piece from you.
I think we're going for the most obvious things, like the pieces of the genre that we have, kind of like Knives Out, for example, the most recent examples that we have, these movies of like really revitalizing popularly this genre of the whodunit scene. And like we have in this case, we have the absence completely of your Benoit Blanc, and your characters like that. And it's just, I was like, oh, there's not a smart cookie here trying to find out who did it. It's just like everybody's blaming each other, and everybody's got such motives to even go about committing some kind of crime in this contest.
Yeah. No, that's true. And yeah, when you go into murder mysteries, like right now, Knives Out is kind of the gold standard of like what is happening in the genre right now. And it's funny, like, bringing up that this is an A24 film, every genre has its like, oh, it's the A24 version of that. And like, I think that would be a pretty clear and easy way to describe this movie to someone. It's like an A24 Knives Out.
Yes.
Rose, are you a fan of Knives Out?
I am, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've also watched Glass Onion, and Janelle Monáe is just everything. So loved that. I think it's hard to make a sequel, especially since, the first Knives Out was just such a hit. But I feel like they did a good job, and it's definitely a fun watch. Definitely much more of a fun watch compared to Medusa Deluxe, which was much more of an intense watch.
Yes.
So I think your comparison to like the A24 version is a good one.
Yeah. Right on. Rose, let's go to another piece.
Sure. Let's see here. So I just wrote generally John Waters mostly because of the hair. It's a camp movie in many ways, Medusa Deluxe, I feel like. And so I think I'm not even like super familiar with a lot of John Waters' works, but even just thinking about the vibe of him and his work came to me when I was watching it. So the hair stuff, very camp, outfits, all of that. But then I think also a little bit because the characters are so extreme, and there are very extreme characters in Mr. Waters' works as well. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. All of these characters are like very loud and very like big. And I think like I was a little mixed overall on Medusa Deluxe. Like I liked it quite a bit, but like I didn't love it. But I think I might have loved it if it was even bigger and even weirder and even more John Waters-ish. I think that's a great comparison, but I wish it was even more in there. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be a different movie if it had more of that, but it could still exist in the same vein, and it would be kooky. I mean, it's already a little bit kooky, so that would definitely take it to the next level.
Sure, absolutely. I will go with Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof for my next puzzle piece. basically there's this violent act that is completely off screen, and a bunch of female characters who are basically talking about how horrible everything that's happened is, but we're never really seeing it. And we spend the time with all these very strong, very interesting, very, like I said, loud, female characters that are very big, and everything is shot in a way that's like very like bright and like visually exciting, and very much like any Tarantino film, really. But certainly the very like female energy of that one lends itself more to this. And yeah, mainly just that idea of we're spending the time with these characters and the effects of some violent act on them versus actually seeing the violence. And then, of course, at the end of Death Proof, we do see a shitload of violence, but it doesn't really happen till the end. And here we also see some, but not that much. So
I think also for the Tarantino comparison, it's a small ensemble cast for Medusa Deluxe, which kind of I think harkens back to like Reservoir Dogs and even Hateful Eight. It's pretty contained in terms of the characters that we're following.
Sure, one location, these set characters that there's no kind of in or out because they're all stuck there. So absolutely. Guillermo, let's go to another piece.
Like, oh man, the sticking with those like the darkness, the grittiness of it to an extent, especially the lighting. I thought a lot back to the Daredevil show, the one on Netflix, one on Disney, because like the way how sometimes, especially like when they did one shots or like they did like the compressed spaces, you felt like, okay, who's here, who's there, and you didn't know where was our character in this our character sometimes, and especially like one of our main suspects, I guess, our dear Gak here, that he will come on sometimes and then he would just disappear, or like you'll see him doing one thing, you're like, what is that going on over there? And I thought a lot back to that kind of noir-esque type of pieces.
Right on. Yeah, I haven't seen Daredevil, so I can't really speak to that specifically. Rose, are you a fan of the Daredevil show?
I'm not familiar.
I haven't seen it. So, but what I will say though, as long as we're bringing up Gak, because we haven't really talked about him yet, at all. Like, what a off-putting character this guy is. Yeah, great performance from this actor, Heider Ali. I wrote down his name. Yeah, very interesting performance. It's funny, I saw a lot of people on Letterboxd actually comparing this to Gaspar Noé's Climax, which is a favorite of mine. I love that movie. I don't really see the comparison, but this guy looks like Gaspar Noé, so I guess you could kind of say it's like Gaspar Noé thrown into this weird little thriller. So
yes,
sure, why not?
This was the groundskeeper, right? Gak?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Outstanding performance, though, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. Rose, what do you got next?
So there's a pretty extensive opening sequence to Medusa Deluxe, and it reminded me of the James Bond films.
Ooh.
I thought of Die Another Day, which may just because I that was the first James Bond film I ever saw. We had it on VHS growing up, so I don't know if that's just somewhere in my memory, but it opened kind of like an action movie with that particular sequence.
Sure.
But I liked that it was with hairbrushes and hairspray. Like, it was these oversized hair dressing items, but there were people like dancing and like doing action shots through them and over them and stuff. So obviously it fit the theme of the film, but it set me up for some type of adventure that wasn't just hanging out at a hair event.
Right.
And then I don't know how I feel about it, but since we're talking about the beginning, I will also mention there's a dance sequence at the end, and that was unexpected for me. I don't have any strong thoughts to tell you guys. I have not developed anything specific to say about it, but just throwing it out there. Funny little way to close out.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of the ending of White Noise, the new Noah Baumbach film, which ends also in like just a out of nowhere dance sequence and is awesome. But yeah, it's a great way to end your movie for sure. Um, but yeah, definitely this movie, it starts off in a way that you just really have no idea where it's heading. And I went into this blind. Like I had heard buzz, like I had said, like out of festivals, but I didn't actually know what was going to be happening in the movie, or like what it was going to be necessarily about. So yeah, they really do not clue you in that opening. It could have gone in a James Bond direction. It could have
Mhm.
gone in a horror direction, a thriller, like whatever. They really kind of just throw you into this world and kind of figure out what's going to happen from there. But yeah, I think that's interesting though, using James Bond as the example of that. So great one there. I will go with a ridiculous puzzle piece, but I can't help myself. I'm going with Barbershop
Yes.
from director Tim Story from 2002, which I just rewatched recently because his new film, The Blackening, came out,
Mhm.
and so I was like, I'm going to revisit Barbershop, and it's so good. It's just so funny, but obviously, it's so like the setting of all these people who cut hair for a living and hanging out, just gossiping, talking with each other about their coworkers, their lives, their customers, the world around them, everything going on. It's kind of an easy comparison to make, and I think it's worthwhile comparison to make, even though they're obviously very, very different movies.
No, that's great. I've done a few hair modeling gigs, and I do think that there is some truth to the storytelling in Medusa Deluxe. It is a lot of hanging out. I mean,
Hmm.
I've never been to one where there was a murder that I had to stay.
Scalping.
Yeah, I didn't. That hasn't happened for me, thank goodness. Knock on wood. But there's definitely some truth to that, just the hangout. And off of what you're saying, I did want to note that I think that Thomas Hardiman, who directed and wrote Medusa Deluxe, did a great job using hair language throughout the film.
Mm,
This is not exactly a puzzle piece, just an observation. But like there's the one moment when they are all hanging out and the model who had been with the person who was killed is like, he wanted to do the upside down pear. And all of the other
right.
models were like, oh, no, oh my gosh. And like, I do not know what an upside down pear is, but all of them did. And it kind of created that community of who they are and what they're into. And then another
Yeah.
one I referenced was like, there were two of the women were talking and she was like trying to remind the other woman of this different show they had done, and she was like, there's a blue bob with turquoise undercut or something like that. And like, so just another example of hair being used as an identifier amongst the community, but also as like a marker
Yeah.
of time for
Sure.
the community. Like, oh yeah, that year you did that look, I remember that, and
That's what was in, and that's what we were like all going for and
for
whatnot.
sure,
Mhm.
exactly. And like even this year, it's like when they look back on it, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, it was the year he got scalped." Like even that is hair related, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that
Everything's
was
hair
just an
related.
observation.
Absolutely. I was thinking of, but I've actually never seen it. I was thinking of that documentary with Chris Rock, Good Hair,
Mm.
which, definitely delves into the importance of hairstyles in a particular community, and just, how much that kind of like speaks to the community. And I don't know. Have either of you seen that movie? I haven't seen it,
I've not
but
I
seen that
haven't
one
seen it.
yet. No.
yeah.
But I remember hearing
Right
about it
on.
getting great reviews.
Yeah, for sure. So that's our like three rounds of pieces. Did either of you have any others that you wanted to throw into the mix before we wrap up Medusa Deluxe?
I think I've got one.
Sure.
Follow me in this one because it's a bit out there. Because I feel like the build up to the end and like how like kind of like almost sets the standard within the U.S. films of like detective stories or like drama mystery murders like this is the Maltese Falcon. Kind
Hmm.
of like how we have this build up of our characters going around, running about each other, seeing who's the actual traitor, what's going on, the sub
Yeah.
stories, and then we have that finale and the stuff the dreams are made of type of line right here that we see towards the end, but we see actually moving forward, and that's something so absent within the genre. Most of the time our
Mm.
stories just die right there. with the story.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, there's a lot to explore here. So once we kind of know where it's headed, like they still have a lot left to do in that building and in that event and figuring out what's going on. So absolutely, I think that's an interesting one to throw in there. What about you, Rose? Anything else that you wanted to
I
throw
did
in?
have one last project I wanted to mention. I don't necessarily think that the filmmakers had an opportunity to check out this film, but
Hmm.
it reminded me of a short film called Undercut, which was in the Las Vegas 2018 48-hour film festival
Oh, nice.
and is available on YouTube. And since we've all got our Las Vegas connects, I feel like it was worth mentioning because
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe they did get to see it. Would love that for them if they did. If not, would still love for people to check out this piece on YouTube. Like, shout out to local filmmakers. Um, I have the link here. I'm worried it's going to start making noise if I look at it. No, okay, I did it. I did it. Flea Pit Flicks is the YouTube account that it is on, and I can share the link with
Okay.
you, David.
Yeah, email me the link and I'll add it to the show notes.
Okay.
Definitely people should check that out. I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, it's a very
Same.
fun. It's very fun, and it's about a haircutting. So
Yeah.
that's all.
Right on, right on.
Mhm.
Awesome. I'll throw in. I had two others. One of them is kind of like goes along the same lines as 1917, and that's Birdman, the Inarritu film. Also, a lot of backstage stuff, so it kind of really especially fits the that kind of scene. But the other one that I was going to bring up is The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. All the twisting and turning down long hallways and the disorienting nature of the building that you're in, that all just kind of feels like a labyrinth and you can't quite get your bearings no matter where they're going. And we talked about that cinematographer following him around with the camera the whole time, and like how difficult that must have been to choreograph all those shots and everything moving constantly. So yeah, I just thought of The Shining and just how you can never quite catch your bearings in that hotel as they're going through all the hallways and everything like that. So yeah, that's the last one I had there. So I will read down our finished list of pieces here, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. But we talked about 1917, Blow Up, Her Smell, Knives Out, John Waters films, Death Proof, Daredevil, James Bond films, especially Die Another Day, Barbershop, The Maltese Falcon, Undercut, The Shining, and Birdman. Yeah, a lot of like stuff from all over the place, really. Because I mean, we do have the hair aspect, which is like kind of the main setting, but then also the one shot aspect, the murder mystery aspect. Like this is definitely an interesting mix of things going on here. Let's start with you, Guillermo. Any closing thoughts? Anything that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to while doing puzzle pieces?
I mean, I did love the unique trajectory of the story. Like I think we brushed up when I talked about Maltese Falcon. The ending is done in such a way that it catches you off guard, like whoa. And I do appreciate that. Um, and of course, to the viewers, your thoughts on what you think about that ending, because that was interesting for sure. That was a choice.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy the movie overall. That was something new, and it's A24, so can never go wrong with it. So
Yeah, right. For sure. How about you, Rose?
Yes. So first off, A24, I want to thank Guillermo for being so thoughtful about finding a production company that is supportive of the actors and writers who are on strike right now. So once more, thank you, Guillermo, for that. AMPTP, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, are the main body that are being striked against. And there's been a number of contract negotiations that they've declined. However, A24 has agreed to those contract requests from SAG-AFTRA and WGA. So that's one of the reasons why they are an outlier. And
Awesome.
even though they are a large production company, they are technically an indie production company. So that's a really cool element about them. And I'm kudos to them because being independent filmmakers is hard. And then to get to
Yeah.
this level, they've been doing this for years and years and have found this mainstream success, which is great. Okay, off my soapbox, back onto the subject of the film, I do want to say that I thought the characters were really well acted and engaging. I was very
Mhm.
um, invested in the characters. I think actually I didn't. I had mixed feelings about the ending because I was so invested in the characters that were really fleshed out, and I felt like I don't know. I don't want to do any spoilers. So I second Guillermo on whenever you, the viewer, listener, watches the film, think about how that ending makes you feel. Um,
Mhm.
but so well performed and unique. I thought each character had a unique personality, and it felt
Yeah.
like they were real humans with real personalities. It didn't feel cartoonish, even if I've mentioned John Waters here.
Sure. Yeah.
These I felt like were believable characters that were fun to watch on screen.
Yeah, they're all such strong personalities that, like, even though this film is relatively quick, like 90 to 100 minutes, like, you really feel like you know everybody, like, all these people. And there's a lot of characters, and you kind of get enough time with all of them that you have a real strong grasp of them all. So, yeah, I mean, that speaks to a great script, but also great performances. So, for sure, I think that does it for Medusa Deluxe. Guillermo, let's start with you. What is something you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Oh wow.
It could be an old movie or a new movie.
Oh, good, because I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's been a busy month, so like I caught the from the Fathom events. I caught the screening of Castle in the Sky, which one is one
Oh,
of the great Miyazaki films a few
sure.
weeks ago. So it's always good to see old movies in the great screen. It's just, oh my gosh, the experience,
Oh,
and
yeah.
revisiting movies that inspire in the terms of storytelling and just like visuals. I enjoyed a good rewatch on the big screen.
That would be a good one to see on the big screen for sure. How about you, Rose?
Yeah, that's super cool to see that one on the big screen. That's awesome. For me, I watched recently Dog Day Afternoon, the 1975 film with Al Pacino.
Nice.
Fantastic. Honestly, new favorite film. Highly recommend people check it out.
Absolutely. We actually, speaking of Awesome Movie, Hour, just covered it on Awesome Movie Hour a few weeks back, and it's so good. Yeah.
Amazing. I'll have to listen to that
Yeah.
episode. It was, yeah, I mean, it is. It's amazing. It's great storytelling. It's more, I don't know, it's like forward thinking for the
Mm-hmm.
1970s. Like it holds up over the years, which is nice. And
Yeah.
again, performances outstanding. Also like ensembles, like small ensemble cast, intimate, but like very engaging. So yeah, big
Yeah.
fan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, Guys, thank you so much for doing the show. Guillermo, where can people find you and your work?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Gilbarahona, GuillBarahona. There you can find also my link tree, which connects you to recent interviews like this one coming up soon, and some of the other work that I've done, especially voiceover and some other writing work, but also kind of like the trajectory of the shorts that Rose and I are working on, and some of the other stuff that I'm currently working on as well.
Awesome. How about you, Rose?
Well, first I want to hear your movie recommendation, David.
Oh, my movie recommendation. Let's see. What have I watched recently? Now I'm on the hot seat, and
Yeah.
I have to pull up my letterbox, as a lot of my guests usually do, to see what did I really like lately. I'll go with Landscape with Invisible Hand, which I'm still looking for a guest for. If anybody listening to this episode, I really want to get into that one. It's a weird one. The new film from Corey Finley, who did Thoroughbreds and Bad Education.
Oh.
It's his third film and is easily his weirdest film. And I don't know. People should definitely check it out, even though I have a feeling most people won't like it very much, but I did. So.
Okay. Nice.
You never know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah. All right. Yes, me. My name is Rose Donahue, and you can find me on Instagram at Rose Donahue _ RoseDonahue. I do most of my stuff there, so you'll be seeing promos or heads up about what's going on. I'm an actor and producer working freelance. I've also recently opened an Etsy shop, and I am putting portion of contributions towards the Entertainment Community Fund to support people who are on strike right now. So if anyone feels inspired, it is called the T-Shirt Fund on Etsy. You can find it through the link tree in my bio on Instagram as well.
Fantastic. And again, thank you for doing that. Like, that's awesome that you're out there. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for doing the show, and hopefully we can get you back again sometime.
Thanks for having us.
Hopefully soon. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, and you know what? Before we go, you guys have a screening coming up here in Las Vegas this week, right?
Yes, we do.
We've got a double header for people to come check out if they want to. We've got 2 short films playing back to back on Wednesday, August 30th.
At 7 p.m.
Where is that, Guillermo?
at the Millennium Fandom Bar in downtown Las Vegas.
Woot woot! And we'll be answering some questions there,
Oh, sweet.
like a Q&A.
That sounds like really like an awesome time. So everybody, I'll have a link down in the show notes. So make sure to check that out. And again, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best pictures, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Medusa Deluxe. Thank you to Rose and Guillermo for joining me on that one. And thank you to all you out there listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening right now. And if there happens to be a 5-star button that you can click on, leave a little review, saying what you thought of the show, it would be very much appreciated if you did that. It helps get the show in front of new listeners, and that's, of course, what we're trying to do here is get the show out to as many people as we can. So please do that, and of course, you can follow us on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Aside from that, I do want to remind you, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. And speaking of my music career, at the time that this episode goes up, I will be in the middle of releasing track by track an exclusive soundtrack album. This is a film that I scored in 2021 called Jacqueline, and I'm not putting this one out as like a full-fledged album release of mine. I have a whole bunch of albums out under my name, David Rosen, but this one will be exclusive to the Patreon, and it's, I think, a really good soundtrack, and I could release it as its own album, but, I wanted to make this one something special just for the Patreon subscribers. But since we're in the middle of releasing this thing right now, I'm going to play a track from that right now. So this is a track from the soundtrack album Jacqueline. The track is called Docs. And like I said, it's a piece from this film from director Chris Johnson. You can watch the film on Tubi right now, so check out Jacqueline. I'll put a link in the show notes. But you can get the whole soundtrack exclusively on the Produced by David Rosen Patreon at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. So I hope you enjoy the track, and we will be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.